spoke to a women's group in South Carolina in November of 1942. I found this talk attached to a letter she wrote a friend describing the talk and its reception. The Columbia newspaper wrote several short articles announcing her talk and reviewing it. She writes to her friend, "If you know South Carolina at all, you know that it is the strongest citadel of prejudice in the South today, with the exception perhaps of Mississippi. For that reason, I hesitated, not because I cared what they thought of me, but because the wrong approach would do far more harm than good. If you make a certain type of Southerner too mad, he'll fight you when you say the sun will rise tomorrow." I believe that. She started her talk by discussing the process of writing a historical novel. She explained that she may have taught history in high school, but looking back, she wasn't very good at it. She started writing the book Beyond Surrender with the intention of telling the story of a Southern family from the close of the Civil War to present time. Instead of talking about writing the novel, which is what they expected, she launched into a heated debate: why Reconstruction is the most misunderstood and misinterpreted era in American history. Like many Southerners, Sims believed that the war was bad, but Reconstruction was worse. She also believed the North was directly responsible for all of the South's suffering. After conducting her research, she began to question why everyone seemed to mislead her. Even her own grandparents held these beliefs. She gives 3 reasons for this Southern mentality. Number 1, drama lingers in memory. There were plenty of peaceful times, but we tend to remember the bad more than the good. Number 2, grim poverty is an inevitable consequence of such a war. Following the war, the South at large would still have been hungry and homeless, even if the North had left them alone. Number 3, war is a powerful and stimulating drug. It seems to change a man and pushes his fight to survive. When the opiate of war has worn off, men and women come to themselves, look around them, and shudder. She mentions politicians such as Huey Long, if you're familiar at all with the corrupt politicians of the South. She says, "The story of politics is only rarely in part the story of a people. And in order to find that story, a student has to look beyond the records in state houses and magistrates' courts. This is exactly what Marian did. She chose to look deeper than the surface level." She stressed she did not want to be misunderstood. She merely wanted to take a cold, hard look at a tumultuous time. She wanted the blame to be equally shared, and she focused much of her talk on just that, sharing the blame. Whether it be the North, suffrage, the South, or the freed slaves, she believed everyone played a part in the faults of Reconstruction. This quote is powerful, so bear with me. She says, "The greatest tragedy of Reconstruction to me is not that the Negroes sat for a time in the halls of government, but that a combination of Southern prejudice and Northern interference erected a barrier of suspicion and even hatred between races that were and still are mutually dependent. Through no fault of their own, the Negroes became a menace for one side and a weapon for the other. Through Northern political greed and Southern determination not to concede an inch, the Negroes were pitched into the camp of unscrupulous politicians and starry-eyed idealists who understood neither their weakness nor their strength." This is seen in Beyond Surrender, with the starry-eyed Northerner that I mentioned buys a plantation with the hopes of not only working with the freed slaves in peace and harmony, but building a school for the black race. Inevitably, the Northerner fails and has to return home to work in his office job. She found what she called the legend of terror to be false as well. Many authors of the time wrote about white women being afraid of black men and staying locked up at home because of it. Throughout her research, she read several diaries and letters and could not find examples of young ladies afraid of black men. She connected her talk to what was happening in the South in 1942 and what could easily happen in the States today. She describes a disturbing scene in Charlotte which happened right before her talk. A man was handing out copies of The Watchtower, which is a Jehovah's Witness publication, and was attacked by a group of angry citizens. Sims was appalled by the Gestapo methods and feared that these types of attacks would spread and may start to include everyone who didn't fully agree with the popular thinking. She spoke, "Watching our coastline is only half of our national defense. The other half consists in watching our own words and emotions." Marian also discusses the Klan in her talk, and again, her words are more effective than my interpretation. She says, "Of all the phases of that era, none is so difficult to appraise as the character and influence of the Ku Klux Klan. Its secrets have been too well preserved even after 75 years. I have my own conclusions after a lot of thought and study, but they may be false. I believe the plan included, in the beginning, intelligent members of the upper class, but that it disintegrated into a lawless organization which was used by both sides and both races to avenge private grievances. Its active life is very short, only a few months in most parts of the state, and its influence has been greatly overestimated. She concluded her talk by saying, I hope I haven't bored you, but I hope I've made you think. We Southerners are inclined to feel too much and think too little, and this is no time to determine conduct by emotion. To stand in front of a group of Southern women in South Carolina and share such views as this took courage. Sims chose to use her time to help ease the tensions still felt between the North and South and black and white. She did not attack any one group and used her time wisely. Something probably unexpected by the group of women, but hopefully something that made a difference. As she says, we can work for a better and a juster world, or we can set our chins, hold on to our prejudices, and walk backward into the future. Apparently her message was well received, and she writes, woman after woman came to me afterwards, apparently in complete sincerity, and thanked me for saying things that needed so badly to be said. One older lady said she had waited her whole life to hear some of these things. The newspaper reviewed her talk saying, beginning humorously, Mrs. Sims instantly won her audience by her quiet poise and charm. She held them by the increasing interest and deep thoughtfulness of her remarks and the courage and significance of her ideas.